What if we would live in a world where launching games in an unplayable state or broken would be illegal and companies would get legally prosecuted? What if I told you that companies like Ubisoft will sue if they try to shut down or take games away that you paid full price for? Well, guys, strap on, get your popcorn, because gaming as you know it is about to change. Forever. So, let's paint a picture. You've got your favorite multiplayer game. You've spent countless hours playing it, maybe even dropped a bit of cash on in-game goodies. Everything's going great until, out of nowhere, the servers get shut down. Bam! Your game is dead. It's not just a bad day, it's a huge letdown. All the work, all the money you put into it, it feels like it's all gone to waste. It's like buying a movie, only to find out you can't watch it because the streaming service decided to yank it from their catalog. Now, imagine Ubisoft or any big publisher pulling the plug on a game like The Crew. Whether the game was a critical darling or a bit of a flop, it's still someone's favorite. Even a game that scored a 3 out of 10 could be a cherished experience for someone. Shutting down these games is like saying, thanks for your money, but we're done with you now. It's not just disappointing, it feels downright unfair. Here's where the European Citizens Initiative comes in, and why it's such a big deal. If this law passes, companies like Ubisoft wouldn't just be able to drop games like hot potatoes. It would mean that if you bought a game, you'd have the right to keep playing it, no matter what the publisher decides. It's about holding companies accountable and ensuring they respect the value of what gamers have invested in, both in terms of time and money. There are two tragedies when games go dark. First off, the work of all those programmers, artists, writers, animators, modelers, and everyone else who labored on a game, maybe for years, is gone forever. Killing a game is also anti-consumer because, people bought that game. They paid for a product, the same way they'd buy a book, a movie, or a song, and they should be able to use that product for as long as they like. Troublingly, there's no legal recourse when a game you paid for gets shut down, but there are people trying to get laws passed to protect both the games and the people who buy them. This is where the new European initiative comes into play. It's a petition aiming to change the game. Games are like digital art. When publishers pull the plug, they're not just ending a service. They're erasing a piece of digital history. This initiative would help preserve these games so they don't vanish into the void. It's like being able to keep a book on your shelf, even if the bookstore goes out of business. This also includes free games with microtransactions. If you've paid for extra content in a free game, you should still be able to use it even if the game becomes unplayable. It's about making sure that in-game purchases don't turn into a dead-end investment. Of course, there are some challenges. Implementation. Making sure games remain playable after a publisher exits can be complex. It's not just about leaving the game accessible. It involves ensuring players can still enjoy it without needing the publisher's support. Publishers might argue that this law could be costly or difficult to implement. They might worry about the logistics and financial strain of maintaining games long-term. There's also the issue of how practical it is for smaller developers or publishers who might struggle with the resources required to comply with this law. You want my take? If you can't afford to maintain a game, don't make it. We the gamers don't feel sorry for you. Do you feel sorry for gamers when you pull the plug? If this law passes, we might actually get less online and live service games. And you know what? That's good, because now, when a dev will be thinking about making a live service game, they will need to take in consideration the law. The games that will come out will most definitely be a quality one. Otherwise, the whole publisher could go bankrupt. High risk, high reward. Am I right? So here's the scoop. To get this new law into consideration, there's a petition rolling out across Europe. The idea is pretty straightforward. If they can gather 1 million signatures from European citizens, the petition could actually push for the law to be considered. Think of it like a big, collective, we want this, from gamers all over Europe. By signing, you're helping to make sure that if you've invested in a game, it stays playable. Even if the publisher decides to shut down the servers, it's like rallying together to ensure that your favorite games don't just vanish because a company decided to move on. The petition is open for a full year, so there's plenty of time to get those signatures. If you're a gamer who's ever felt the sting of losing access to a game you love, or if you just think it's fair that purchased games should be preserved, signing this petition is a great way to support the cause. So, if you're in Europe and want to make sure your favorite games stay alive, this is your chance to make a difference. Spread the word, sign the petition, and let's push for a law that keeps our digital playgrounds thriving for years to come. I'm glad that governments are finally looking into the gaming industry and starting to regulate it. It's like the Wild West out there, people getting fired left and right like they're dirty socks, crazy crunch times that destroy families, and massive corporations like Microsoft buying up studios for $70 billion only to shut them down right after, firing tens of thousands of developers. All they really wanted were the rights to the IPs, and they end up screwing us gamers with mediocre games, microtransactions, and launching broken titles. It's time for a change. it's time for the industry to be scrutinized closely. The gaming industry has grown bigger than both the movie and music industries and has been left unchecked for decades. But gamers' voices have become increasingly loud in recent years, and European governments are often the first to step in and say, "Hold up, you can't do that. Just imagine, you've bought a brand new car, a Ford Focus, and you're loving it. It's got that fresh off the lot feel, and you're excited for years of road trips and daily commutes. Then, after 10 years, Ford comes knocking and says, 'Hey, we're no longer supporting your car. It's time for you to give it up.' Crazy, right? You've paid for it, taken care of it, and it's still running perfectly fine. But suddenly, because Ford has moved on, you can't get it serviced anymore. It's a bit like that for gamers when a game's servers get shut down. In case you don't know the story about the crew and how tragic it is, let me tell you. Till this day, I cannot believe this was true. I thought it was a clickbait, but it's as real as it can get. And I am still surprised nobody got arrested for these moves. So, here's the scoop on Ubisoft and the crew. Ubisoft has decided to shut down the servers for the original The Crew game on March 31st, 2024. That means once those servers go dark, the game will become completely unplayable. This move has really upset a lot of gamers, because even though they bought the game, they won't be able to access it anymore. But it gets worse. After announcing the shutdown, Ubisoft reportedly started removing The Crew from players' digital libraries and revoking their licenses. This means people who bought the game are now unable to download or install it. It's like buying a movie and then being told you can't watch it because the studio decided to pull it from every platform. Players are calling this move abhorrent and ruthless, feeling like they've been robbed of something they rightfully own. Even though The Crew required an online connection to play, some players were hopeful that private servers or mods could keep the game alive after the official shutdown. Sadly, Ubisoft's decision to revoke licenses has effectively dashed those hopes, making it impossible for players to access or modify the game on their own. But here's where things take a hopeful turn. A group of dedicated modders has stepped up with a project called The Crew Revival. Their goal is to recreate the server-side software needed to play The Crew online again. They believe the game is worth preserving because of its unique open-world experience and the fact that it's still fun to play solo. The Crew Revival team hopes to have their servers up and running before the game's 10th anniversary in December 2024, and they plan to offer the service for free. The community has rallied around this project, showing strong support for keeping the game alive. Here's how to compare the situation with Forza Horizon 4. Forza Horizon 4 is set to be delisted from digital storefronts, like Steam and the Microsoft Store, on December 15, 2024, due to expiring licenses. This means you won't be able to buy the game or its DLC from these platforms after that date. However, there's a silver lining. If you already own the game, it will still be playable, including its offline, online, and multiplayer features. Physical copies bought after the delisting will continue to work just fine. DLC delisting. Starting June 25, 2024, only the base game and its additions, Standard, Deluxe, Ultimate, will be available for purchase. All DLC will be removed from sale, so if you want any extra content, you'll need to grab it before then. So while Forza Horizon 4 will no longer be available for digital purchase after December 2024, it won't face a complete shutdown like The Crew. The game will remain playable for existing owners, and physical copies will continue to work. The removal of the game is due to licensing issues rather than a decision to pull the plug entirely. Moral of the story? It's possible. I want to leave you with the best tip I can offer. Buy physical media. Download the game with all its updates and never delete it, hoping that the cloud will keep your game safe. The cloud doesn't really exist. It's just stored on computer hard drives somewhere. Buy your own hard drives. I usually go for HDDs because they're pretty cheap these days, and store your games on them. When I want to play a game, I download it from my hard drives to my PS5. That's the safest way I know to preserve games right now. Hopefully, governments will step in and make companies do more for gamers. This is Ashley signing out.